And today we are going to do a super cute little cards with watercolor, and it's going to be cupcakes and cakes. So before we really begin, please don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell so you get notifications for our future videos. And I'll just explain really fast when I am speeding up this tutorial so it doesn't bore you out to death. The cupcakes is pretty much two shapes. One is trapezoid, and that's the cup. And then the top is an oval, but you don't want to make it perfect, you want to break it up. And a cake is a rectangle or a square, and you break it up in few layers and then put a really elongated oval too. And a slice of cupcake is a triangle, and you just draw down the sides and make them a little bit uneven, and the one that is closer to you should be the lowest one. And a package, a gift, is a combination of 3 diamonds, and depends on, I guess, how it's going to face you. So I'm facing one corner towards me, so that makes it 3 diamonds connected to each other with a bow. And the bow is made out of almost like, looks like drops that are starting from the same point, and then the little swirlies around, continuation of the ribbon. So on the side I have the colors, and I think I'm gonna start doing this on all my future videos because it makes it very easy for you guys to see what colors I'll be using. And the colors are 2 different reds, yellow and orange, 2 different blues and black. On the end I will, because this is more like illustration, I guess, I'm going to use a sharpie with a fine point to get this cupcakes and cakes and gift pop out. I'm using wet on wet technique, and the cool thing about painting a few things at the same time, and they're very similar, so I'm just switching the colors around. I'm giving some time between the layers by not just waiting but moving on to another painting or another little illustration. So this one I had to like go around each of those little circles, make the background wet and leave those dry, because I really wanted that to be like almost like sprinkles. And this one I am going to do it very, very light, almost like it has white frosting, but we're gonna give it a little bit of a shadow, I guess, purpley. But we're gonna leave it very, very light, and I really, really like that cloud that happened there. So we dropped very little color on this one, and creating obviously the layers of the cake. I'm using, because they're so tiny, I'm using more dry, the wet on dry, which means my canvas is dry, and I'm going with the wet brush loaded with a little bit of paint, so the paint is not super drippy. So a lot of times when I have a smaller area to paint, I will go in with the dry surface and the wet brush, and not wet the surface and go with wet brush, because then I don't have much control on a very, very little area. So that could be a helpful thing. And just adding a little bit of paint, adding a little bit of the shadow where it belongs, like underneath the edges, on the bottom side, and one on left or right depending on what you guys choose. And really it's like preference. I mean, decide where you want to see your shadow, and is it more on the top, is it more on the one side? It's one of those things that you can play around. And when you're doing an illustration, you have a little bit more, I guess, flexibility, because it doesn't have to be exact. So this one really turned out so cute, and I wanted the sprinkles on the top to pop, so that's why the purple one, very, very light purple, it's, even though it's the lightest, it's on the end, it's gonna pop the most, or it's gonna be more visible. And just the same technique, I'm just adding a little bit of water, dropping in the color and following the shape of the object. So if you saw, I dropped in the paint kind of like one streak from top to bottom on the cups of the cupcake, and that created those lines, and the rest kind of spreads around and makes it a little bit more transparent. So that pretty much is painting by itself. I'm just giving a little bit of suggestion, and then the paint just goes with the water. And I'm gonna do the same with the red bow. Just made it a little tiny wet, and I start dropping things, and then I realized the paint started covering too much, so I had to take some of the paint off. And I'm doing that a lot on the tiny little areas. So if the paint starts moving too fast, I dry my brush and I just take some of the paint off. Let's add a little more color. It just seems a little too dull for a happy cake. So I'm gonna just add a little bit more of a color on the sides, bottom and the top. And then I am going to go with a clean wet brush and kind of soften the edge that it's going on the inside. And then this area, it can handle a little bit more color, so I'm going in with a little bit of orange and brown, or ochre. If you have ochre, you can use ochre, and just creating a little bit of the shadow underneath the frosting and then down the lines of the cupcake. So do you see how the purple one really sticks out? And how to do a candle is a rectangle with a tiny little wick, a line for the wick, and then a drop for the flame, and then just orange color on the top. So it's super easy. And I started using those little cards. I bought some envelopes from Amazon actually, and they were I think 3x3, if I'm not wrong, but I think you can find any size. But I really like the tiny little square cards and envelopes. So that was kind of a fun little painting that will be very useful. And at the same time, you can practice your watercolor techniques or whatever you have learned until now. So I added a little bit more purple just to kind of the bottom, but it's still the lightest cake or cupcake on the page. And now we're gonna go for the cake. And I think I'm gonna try the same thing on the cake, leave it a little bit lighter than the rest. Adding a little shadow right underneath the cup, and then just with water going around, and as soon as I touch that paint underneath, it starts merging with the water and creates a perfect shadow. So if it dilutes a little bit too much, you just take a little paint and just drop it right there in the one side or right underneath the cup of the cupcake. And then the same for the cake. And that little skirt on the cake, it's created just by the lines going in those directions. Left goes to left, front goes to front, right goes to right. Super easy. Just follow kind of the circle around the cake and fill it in with brush strokes, just short little brush strokes. And the gift is going to be greenish red and kind of orangey circles. And it could be for birthday or Christmas or whatever. So it turned out really cute. In the beginning I wasn't quite sure liking these colors, but once I put the Sharpie then it really popped out and made it kind of fun. So I added a plate just because this seemed like kind of hanging in the space. So just 2 ovals, and added a little bit of a darker edge on both of the ovals to create illusion of a shadow. So it's not perfect, it doesn't have to be, because none of those things should be looking perfect. They're more, like I said, illustrations than realistic paintings, but we are trying to create, again, illusions. So with that, I'm just gonna add a little bit of background here and there, and not all of them will get the background, but I thought that this one with the candle will look really cool with a little bit of yellow on the top, so it's gonna look like it's illuminating. And absolutely the same exact technique I'm using for all of the I guess surface that those things are sitting on, from cupcakes to cakes and gifts. Adding the shadow right underneath them, and then I am making the surface around wet, and then gently bringing the water to the painted area where I just added the shadow, and that pretty much does it for me. I'm using actually white paint, which sometimes kind of makes it makes the color of the paint underneath a little duller, a little less of a brighter color, so it creates like a highlight in a way. It definitely doesn't turn white because you will see the other color underneath when it dries, but it still gives it a cool effect. So you're gonna see how once I start outlining with just a Sharpie, it's a fine point Sharpie, you're going to see how these things pop out and create a really cool little cards, illustrated cards. And I am adding even the lines on the cups, kind of going from top to bottom or bottom to top, not really making them all the way. So some of them are going halfway from the top and some of them are going halfway from the bottom, but it just makes everything pop so much. And there's a happy birthday. Obviously that's gonna be a birthday one, and I think that happy birthday is gone already. And you see how by outlining, now we're done. I mean, this is it. And if you enjoyed this video, please give us thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel, and let me know if you'd like me to paint something different, and we'll see you soon. Thanks, bye bye.